Good morning, everyone. It's Joker, and today we are back with another slime video. And still waking up, but today we are now going to talk about another easy kind of video, the skill fusions and EX upgrades that came with the Warrior's Mind 2.0 meta, led by this new Gobwa and Shuna units. So, Warrior's Mind has already been a thing, and that was for the 1.5 anniversary, all the way back late April of 2022. So we have had this meta. We have never, this is the first time we've ever had a direct, um, I wouldn't say rerun, but a 2.0 of a specific force. Because, they add some characters to other forces as they go on. So, like, the Hinata from Wielder of Magic is also on Warrior's Mind, but she's not, like, she wasn't released with a full team of Warrior's Mind characters. So this is the first 2.0 meta of an actual force right here, which is interesting. They're starting to reuse them. I wonder if they're tired of making really, really stupid small and they're just going to buff up the existing forces. Either way, I'm here for it. But EX upgrades, the Evil Rimuru and EX Guy. Guy's still a pretty good option for a lot of people. Rimuru is a bit more niche, but if you need a single target Earth character, he does work. He just doesn't bring that much to a lot of other teams. He is quite restrictive in what he does. So them getting EX upgrades and getting like their attribute unbound, sorry, EXU upgrades and attribute unbound status, not that big of a deal. If they were already doing single target EX alts, so it doesn't change that much for them. But then we have the actual EX upgrades for Space Ranga and Light Daggrull. Light Daggrull is a double orb stealing character. Like, he is okay. Okay being the keyword. I don't use him. I don't even have his double orb steal maxed out because it doesn't really matter. And now we're in the age of triple orb stealing, so he's really kind of outdated. His skill fusion does turn him into a triple orb stealer though, which we'll talk about. And then his second skill is pretty ass. But so, single target light, we've got Fern. Whatever. He's physical though, so I guess if you need one, there's that. And then Space Ranga actually is an interesting pick because we honestly don't have that many space magic AoE characters. Like, if we filter this out, Raphael is a support alt. He doesn't do damage. Single target, single target. With an EX upgrade, she is an EX AoE. Single target, but support alt. Single target, single target, single target. AoE. AoE, but defense. We don't talk about her. Single target. And then we have Ranga. And then we have Milim, who's also single target. So our pool of EX characters specifically that can do a space magic AoE alt is very limited. Very limited because they're either not good at putting out damage in either way, shape, or form, Raphael, or you need dupes for them to be EX unbound, like this Shion or this Ranga. So he's quite old. He was an OG release character, so you might have him done already. And at that case, then hey, I mean, he can suffice as an AoE space nuker. He's not going to be super great at it, but at least he's better than not having one at all. So that he does actually bring some value into getting an EX upgrade. But then moving into the actual skill fusions, obviously this is Japanese, we'll look at the in-game ones for the actual translations. But we have Evil Rimuru, Space Ranga, Carrion, and then we also got skill fusions for the Wielder of Magic Hinata and Tempest Elite Benimaru that we will look at. So let's start with Rimuru. Let's go back and filter by Warrior's Mind so we can just have everyone on the same screen. Okay, so this Rimuru, he got just one skill fusion. Currently, his skill gives specifically Earth and Space allies 20% alt gauge. And then every time you use your protector, you get another 10%. So you'd have to use your protector 8 times before you could hit the cap of giving just one guaranteed full alt gauge per skill. And then he also lowers everybody's defense by 20%, which doesn't actually do anything. So the fusion changes it to a much better skill at level 10. It's now starting at 50% and then goes up by 10. So you only need to do a protector 5 times, which is a lot more manageable. And it means that you can max people out a lot quicker because you don't need to wait so long into the fight before you get the full effect. And then instead of doing that 20% defense down, he now lowers the ult resistance of everybody by 20%, and that stacks. So, skill is much better. It's much easier to use. It's still limited to Earth and space, which is kind of unfortunate, but he is giving it at a higher rate, and it's easier to cap. And then this is just a much better part too, because defense down is actually awful. Stacking ult resistance down can be quite powerful. So, his skill fusion did make it better by a lot. He's still pretty niche, though. I'm not going to put him on a team just so I can use this bottom part if none of the other characters are Earth or Space, though. So that's the thing. He's still pretty restricted, unfortunately. Next up, Ranga got his skill fusion. Okay, let's go look at Ranga. Now, again, he's an OG character. I don't even have this skill maxed out. So, at level 10, 20% pierce rate and 30% guard penetration. Wow. That's actual ass. So, after the fusion, it's now guaranteed pierce rate for magic allies. So, we now put a restriction on it, but at least the pierce rate is now guaranteed. So, there's give and take there. And then it gives all allies space attack, which is restricted to one element. So really only wants to be run on a space magic team. But since he is, again, an AoE EX nuker now, that means he has guaranteed pierce and 40% space attack for 30 points. So he's got like an okay baseline to become your AoE DPS if you need it for Valor Cup or Jubilee normal stage or something. Like, it's not super great, but it does make him a lot better, and dear lord, the skill is awful. So pretty much anything they did to the skill would made it better. So it's still restricted, but if you look at him as a just solely DPS character, not worrying about trying to put him on a magic space team and use this for support, because it's not going to do that much, he's fine. He's fine, and he fills a niche that we definitely needed, because we just don't have a lot of space options. And then we have Light Daggrull, who I kind of touched on already. It turned his double orb steal into a triple orb steal, and that's about it, I think. So at level 10, transfers 2 random characters' orbs to himself, and then gives his own orbs a 5% damage increase, which is negligible. And then after the skill fusion, it's a triple orb steal, and then a 10% damage increase, which is still like whoop-de-fucking-do. But a triple orb steal now, on a very old character, is fine. And you don't, well, you do need him to be at level 100 to skill fuse this, but because he's so old, maybe you've pulled a lot of dupes of him, and maybe he is just 100, but you don't have Bride Shuna, Summer Hinata, the Windmast Hero, Freerin Raphael. Maybe you need a triple orb stealer. Maybe you have this option available to you. It's better than nothing, and it's better than having just double orb stealers, because that's a lot of extra RNG right there. But otherwise, he didn't really do that much, and the cost of getting him up to a triple orb steal is, level 100 full dupes, his skill leveled up and then fused and then leveled up again. It's quite costly. I don't think they did quite enough to him. They could have buffed this by more than fucking 5% and made it actually worthwhile. But, oh well. Someone had to... the other 2 skill fusions were a lot better. They made their skills much better, and this skill kind of didn't. But someone's got to get the shaft. And then we move on to EX characters who are, still fairly solid. Hinata may be a bit outclassed because of the fact that Exalted Champion Velzard is a thing. And then we have a character who I still use quite a bit in certain scenarios, and that's Tempest Elite Benimaru. So let's look at Hinata right now, wherever you are. There you are. So what has she got? She got it on her all element buff skill, which is exactly what Velzard kind of power crept her out of. So increases all allies, all attribute attack by 50%. So she's giving every character like the 7 elemental buffs. So if you when you match up to your element, you get a 50% buff. So you might be a dark character with like wind, light, space, fire buffs. They don't do anything for you. It just means that she's very generic. She can buff literally anybody on the team. It doesn't matter who the hell you are. And then on top of that, if you need her to nuke, she gives herself a 30% weakness strike, which it's okay. But when you fuse it, let's take a look now. So still 40 points, still 50% all attribute attack, and now she gives everybody 40% weakness strike. So it used to be only herself that got 30, and now it's everybody gets 40%. So now she's become a highly generic buffing character. Everybody gets element attack, everybody gets weakness strike. And so, I mean, it's not a bad skill. Weakness strike's still not a super powerful buff unless you have a literal fuck ton of it. Like, I'm talking hundreds of percentages of weakness strike. 40% will increase your damage. Not by as much as you would like. But when you couple it with an already existing buff, like it does make it into a pretty powerful buff for 40 points. All right, there are a lot worse skills for 40 points that you could use that would not do as much as what this skill would do as far as damage support. So does it make it better? Yes. Is it groundbreaking? Not really. And then we move on to Tempest Elite Benimaru, who I think got the best skill fusion out of everybody. So, currently, it's his physical buff. Everybody gets 50% physical attack, and then he lowers a single enemy's ult resistance by 25%. Now, back when Benimaru came out, we did science, and we compared his buff to Fount of Wisdom Rimuru before he had his skill fusion as well on his physical buff. And so Rimuru was doing 65% and then 20% down for physical resistance, while Benimaru was doing 50%, so less, but then ult resistance down. And what we found out was that in an AoE setting against 3 enemies, Rimuru is going to help you do more damage if you're going to nuke in an AoE kind of format. But if you're nuking a single target only, there's only one enemy, that actually Benimaru's buff is better because the ult resistance down is a lot more impactful and helps cover that gap of missing the 15% physical buff, and the 20% physical resistance is negligible. So now on the skill fusion, we kind of don't have to worry about that anymore because it's still a 50% physical buff for all allies, but now it's a 50% ult resistance debuff to everybody, which means that now Benimaru, his limitation of only being good in single target settings, now is a lot better. And this skill is now a lot better than the skill fused Fount of Wisdom Rimuru's buff, because he's up to 80% and then 80% physical down. 80% physical down doesn't mean that much. 50% ult resistance down means quite a bit. So even though we are missing now 30% on the physical attack, this being higher and also an AoE debuff means that this is going to do a lot more damage than what that Fount of Wisdom Rimuru do. And I will probably skill fuse him for his own video to showcase that, the comparison now of the two different AoE physical buffs and how they differ and why that second part of their skill means a lot. But that should be all the skill fusions we got for right now. Yep. And the EX upgrades. Benimaru, I think, got the best one out of all of them. So, I mean, if you are able to skill fuse him, great. You don't need dupes in him to do that. Thank God. You just have to have him at level 100. Like, base level, you pulled him. Congrats, and you leveled him up. He obviously is easily the best character to get a skill fusion out of this batch. So let me know what you guys think of these batch of characters. Are you more impressed with someone else than I am? Let me know in the comments. But that's it from me. Take it easy, and I'll see you all later.